What would happen if you got it? What would happen if you got it? What is it that you really want? What is it that you're like aching for, you're longing for? Is there a particular relationship, or there's a job or a job promotion that you're longing for, or a particular thing to buy, or a certain amount of money? What is it that you're chasing? And what would happen if you got it? What would happen if you got it? Because there's two problems we face with the things that we want, and we often never think about these things. And if you don't understand these two problems, then you're never going to be happy. Welcome to my channel. My name's Derek, and for the last 3 decades I've been helping people explore and grow in their faith. And in this channel I just give out lots of tools and insights that help you live a deeper, more meaningful life. Now, our desires, they drive our life, don't they? They consume our time and they affect our decisions. They affect how we spend our money, because we imagine if we can get that relationship, or if we can get that thing, or we get that promotion, or we get that holiday, or we get that house, that if we can just get it, then we'd be happy, right? But there's two problems that we often don't think about that get in the way of happiness and meaning and this whole thing working out for us. And the first problem we have is that we might not get it, that we might not get that job, or if we get the job we might lose it. We might never save up enough for that house. Something might happen with the economy. That relationship, that the person may reject us, or we may get together and it may not work out. And you might think, well, yeah, that's true, that's just life, Derek. But if that's the basis for your happiness, your meaning, the kind of deepest part of making life worth living, and you're basing it on something that might not work out, something that's completely outside of your control, then that seems a bit of a risky bet for life, isn't it? I mean, what happens if we could find something that wasn't dependent on circumstances, something that wasn't outside of control, that would deliver meaning and happy and purpose, that was a rock solid basis for life? In a minute I'm going to tell you a story which suggests that there is something. But first, that second problem. So the first problem with things that we chase is we might not get them. But the second problem with the whole get this and then become happy is that we might get it. I mean, human beings, this is really where it gets all very weird. I mean, that we think that if I get that, I'll be happy. If I get that, I'll have purpose. If I get that, I'll have a sense of contentment. But will you? Now, I've kind of grown up in England and supported our national sports team, both in football and in rugby. And I always longed for us to be winners, for us to get to the top, for us to win the World Cup. We won the World Cup in football in 1966, but that was before my time. And it never seemed it was going to happen in football. But then the rugby team in England got quite good and the World Cup started. But the problem we have in the Northern Hemisphere is that the nations in the South, the New Zealands and your South Africa and your Australia, they're always a level above us, and we could just never be as good as them. And then in 2003, the World Cup was in Australia, and we managed somehow to have this good team that somehow got to the final, but we were against Australia in Australia, and they were just so good. It never could happen, surely. But we get to the final of the Rugby World Cup, and somehow we get to the dying minutes, and we're still level with Australia in the World Cup. And we're not quite there, but within touching distance. And then in the dying seconds, Matt Dawson, he passes the ball to Johnny Wilkinson, our kicker. And there's 26 seconds left on the clock, and Johnny Wilkinson gets the ball and he kicks it for a drop goal to put us in the lead in the dying seconds. And then somehow we hang on and we win the World Cup. England are world champions. Never seen that in my lifetime. And Johnny Wilkinson becomes the most famous sportsman on the planet, the most famous rugby player. He's got the most famous moment when he kicks it in the dying seconds. And this is what he says. Let me read it to you. He said, "I woke up after winning the World Cup. Every rugby player's dream. It's the accolade. It's the pinnacle of what you want." He said, "I woke up the next day and could not have felt more empty." He was on a podcast interview and they said to him, that moment, that buzz where you finally got to the top of the mountain. He said, "How long did that feeling last?" And Johnny Wilkinson looked the interviewer right in the eye and said, "It lasted 5 minutes." That when we get to the top, now it might not have lasted you 5 minutes, but you've had things that you've longed for, things that you've wanted, and you've got there, and they might have lasted days, weeks, or even years, but eventually the feeling's worn off, hasn't it? And then you need the next thing. You know, that relationship that was so great, you become dissatisfied with it, or that amazing car, or that device, something like just absolutely incredible, but then it just doesn't last. And so we have this problem that if we get what we really want, that actually it not seem enough. So what do we do then? If we have these desires for something, and if we might not get it, which makes it a problem, then we do get it. Interestingly, there was this boy in Africa, this young lad, and his parents invested in his education. They weren't very well off, but they saved up to invest because they wanted him to have a better life than them. And he did really well at his education. And he ended up moving to Rome and starting his own business. And his business started to go really, really well. And then they ended up getting this incredible job in Milan. And he became this professor. And his career really started advancing. And he started to get this real job status, this massive sense of wealth. And he got a lot of lovers as well. And he seemed to be getting everything that you need. He had the status, the job, he had the wealth, and he had the women. But he had this still sense of dissatisfaction, that he was meant for something more, that it was never quite enough. And then he discovered something. He discovered something that wasn't dependent on circumstances of you might get it, you might not. It was rock solid. And he found something that didn't come and go, that actually once he'd experienced it, gave him this deep sense of meaning and deep satisfaction. And he wrote his biography, and this is the first line of his biography, where he kind of gives what he found was the answer. And I wonder whether it might help us as well. And his name was St. Augustine, and lived in 3rd, 4th century. And this is what he said in the first line of his biography. He said, "You have made us for yourself, God, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." You've made us for yourself, O God, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. There's a verse in the Bible in Ecclesiastes, chapter 3 verse 11, and it says this. It says, God has set eternity in the human heart. God has put the eternity in the human heart. It's almost like we were created with this sense of eternity and infinite, and it's only God who can fill that. That we have this desire for something, and we keep chasing, and we'll have this and we'll have that, and we might not get them, but if we do, it doesn't last very long, because we were created for a connection with God. And you might be someone who's like a follower of Jesus, and faith's an important part of your life, but I want to ask you, what are you chasing? What are you longing after? Because maybe only God is the one who can satisfy it, and are we chasing after a deeper relationship with him? Or maybe you're not really sure about this whole thing, and you wonder what life's about and what meaning's about. Then I want to ask you the same question about what are you chasing? What are you longing for? And if you got it, how long would that last for? And maybe an invitation to just go on a spiritual journey, that maybe it's God you were created for. And maybe you just want to use these questions as a journal prompt, or go for a walk and think about, what am I chasing? What am I created for? And what would happen if I get those things? Because the God with his arms wide open, who would love to connect with you, would love to fill that void in your life. Anyway, hope that was helpful. Hopefully that gets you thinking and gives you a little nudge towards a deeper, more meaningful life. And yeah, we'll have another video soon, so come back and check out what we've got going on here.